Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce you our first speaker at HCPP Congress. His name is Jiri Hora. Jiri is neural scientist and psychiatrist at Czech National Institute of Mental Health. He's focused on drug research. Also, he's focused how potential drugs may have effects on many different patients. Maybe you know, maybe not, that Czech National Institute of Mental Health, they are pretty successful with the studies of psilocybin, and now they're starting research, MDMA research. But Jiri definitely will tell you more. So Jiri, welcome.
Thank you for a kind invitation, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be here and share with you my talk. My talk will be on the subject of very important things like reality, brain, and consciousness. And my aim is to convince you that these things matter and that they are very important to be solved before we feel that we are completely free. I work in National Institute of Mental Health, so it's a big neuroscience institute oriented on neuroscience research from in the entire field, from the molecular part or molecular biology until the clinical psychiatry and psychiatric epidemiology. And we have quite influential group dedicated specifically to the research of psychedelic drugs, their effect, mechanism of action, and therapeutic potential. We have almost 500 employees, typically young, very dedicated scientists doing quite good work. I like the title of this conference, but when I read it for first, it raised some questions to me. So, opt out of the system. My questions are these. Which one? Which is system? So what's the system we want to leave it? The second question is where to live. So what outside the system? We live in different frames, framing biological and non-biological systems. And above one frame there is another frame, above that frame there is another frame. So it's also important where to live. And the most important question is who is subject of leaving the system? So who we are. How our self and our perception that I am the individual person who is here and now, at that time, who I am and how I am constructed. So these theoretical questions are topics of my talk. I am definitely not able to answer all of them, but my intention is to show you some possible ways how to cope with them and maybe sometimes to solve them. So please, we'll start with a small experiment. Please, first, turn your head from left to right side several times and look around. Perfect. And now do it once more, but in this case, move only your eyes from left to right. If you compare two perceptions or two experiences, you will realize that these experiences are completely different. In the first case, the surrounding reality, this parallel polis building rotates, or this room rotates, but if you move your eyes only, the room is stationary. What does the mechanism is quite simple in when we move our eyes, so brain compensates the movement of the environment. If we move our head, the brain does not compensate. So the mechanism, the physiology is simple. That's nothing strange. But why I brought this example? I brought this example just to document you that the reality, how we perceive, is not the reality, that it's something what's maybe quite close to reality or maybe not. So the world, the external world, is modeled in our mind. So we live in models, in neural models of external reality, and the inner reality definitely does not fit the out reality. So there are some translators. There is some transformation between information from above to the information how they are processed in our brain, and that's what my talk will be about. Gregory Bateson, the famous British, later American anthropologist, philosopher, mathematician, and co-founder of cybernetics as a science, wrote very famous sentence that map is not the territory. The typical mistake which people do is that we replace the reality by the map and vice versa. Speaking about maps, the maps are transformation of the reality, and there are three parameters of map. How the reality, how the territory is transformed. First is the scale, the ratio. We have different scales of maps for different purposes. It's not useful to use the world map if I want to go somewhere in Prague. Definitely not. It's unpractical. The second parameter is the projection, so the angle of viewing and mathematics of transformation of the map. Even in classical cartographic maps, there are different projections, and the question is how our brain projects the external reality to our map. And third, the most important question is which type of map it is. We have different maps. We have political, physical, road maps, etc., etc., etc. In each case, or in case of each of the specific type of map, there are two parameters. Which informations are let into the map, and which things are left out. So the map is the abstract construct of the reality, which is designed for specific purposes, and the same is the case in the mental mapping of reality in our head. So as the map is not the territory, the same is for the naming. So the names of things are not the things. These are two different things. So let's imagine who we are. So we are entities who live somewhere and sometimes in the universe, which lasts approximately 14 billion years. So we are somewhere here at the end of the development of the universe, and we have our brains which process the external reality, and our brain constructs the pictures or the figures of the reality. One of these pictures is the most important for us. And that's the picture of ourselves. So that's the point. Let's do a second experiment. Please raise your hands if you see me now. Can you see me? Yes. So thanks. Of course, it was a trick. Sorry for it, because this is typical example of something what's called epistemological error. So error in knowledge, because definitely you are not able to see me, but you see only the pictures in your mind of me. The question is if the picture does something to do with me or not. Probably yes. So the problem that we replace the territory, the reality by mapping, by maps, is the reason for several principal epistemological errors. The first one is that we are local, that we are here and now. This question, the answer is yes. Are you here now? The answer is yes, I am here. But the answer is definitely not obvious, because if the Einstein's equations are right, so we are not here and now, but we are somewhere in four-dimensional space, three dimensions for space and one dimension for time. So our brain mapped the reality like these snapshots, and this is the snapshots of moon around the world. But this is the true picture from the physical point of view. If Einstein is right, and he is right, everything confirms his theory. So our perception of reality should look like this, not like this. It corresponds with another very frequent epistemological error. The typical question, if you are asking somebody about time, is, "Excuse me, but what's the time?" This question should be, in case of space, should be paralleled by the question, "Excuse me, but what's the place?" If you are asking somebody where I am, but this is not the case. But this is for us normal. So for some reasons we process differently time and space, despite the physics. Says that these two things are the same. So instead of what's the place, we are asking people where I am. In case of time, we should ask, excuse me, but when I am. So we should ask when I am and where I am, just to target to address the position in space-time continuum. But this is not the case. Why? Because our brain processed these two dimensions differently for some reasons. So asking who we are. Max Tegmark from MIT, one of the greatest thinkers and physicists of recent time, says that we are the space-time patterns, this macaroni-like space-time patterns evolving 10 to 29 particles. So this is number of molecules from which our body consists. This is an example of space-time patterns of the mineral. So the space-time patterns. So here are not three, but only two, just to be able to imagine it. 2 dimensions of space instead of 3. It's simplification, and it is the 4th dimension of time. In case of mineral, which is stable, the trajectories of molecules from which the mineral consists of are the linear, are running in the same direction and the linear. In case of living creatures, which are the complex organisms, these particles from which our body consists are in very tight interactions with billions of interaction, enzymes, genes, proteins, metabolites. So this is the picture. This is the picture of human beings. So we are temporal interaction of this number of space-time patterns. So that's what we are. These interactions sometimes dissolve, and this point is called as death. Yes, and there should be some beginning. That's the moment when the molecules we consist of started to interact. So if we put a question, excuse me, but when I am, so we are somewhere here. Somebody is closer to this, somebody is farther from it. So that's the physical, and probably from the reality, from the physical point of view, the truest explanation of what human beings are. The second mistake we infer about us, the feeling of uniqueness. So we feel that we are unique. I am here, and I'm alone, and I'm the only one, Jiri Horáček. Yes, the only one. But even this inference could be quite easily weakened, because the feeling of my personality is done by connections of neurons. So our brain consists of 1 billion neurons, which are interconnected, and the connectivity pattern specifically reflects first my memories, my past, and my present. So how I feel myself is done by neural interactions. So that's the source of the unique feeling who I am. But Ludwig Boltzmann, the Austrian great physicist, the father of thermodynamics, postulated the paradox of so-called Boltzmann brains. And this paradox is a typical example of so-called reductio ad absurdum. And this paradox says, so if I am, let's say my mind, is the result of physical interactions between 100 billions of neurons, and we have infinite time to combine different particles, we could be 100% sure that in future or in past, the same pattern of interactions happened or will happen if we have infinite possibilities, infinite number of choices. So it's almost clear that I am not unique, and that in future some copies of me will develop. Yes. If we have the infinite time, infinite number of choices, infinite number of possibilities, we can be 100% sure that there will be some copies. If one copy occurred, why not more than one copy? Because we have infinite time, so we can be sure that there is a chance that there will be infinite number of copies in future. And if there is infinite number of copies, we are 100% sure that we are not the original, but that we are the copies of us. So that's the paradox of Boltzmann brains, which target our feeling of unity. So all these examples document that the way how reality is processed by our brains, in our brains, is limited, and that really outer reality is not the same as the inner reality. And there is the question: so why our mind and why the conscious contents are as they are? What constructed them? Or how I select the information from reality and transform them to the mental images. We are products of evolution, so definitely there has to be the evolutionary explanation. And the evolutionary explanation is that we perceive only things which are relevant, which are useful for us as for beings. And second, that we perceive things which are predictable, so which are somehow stable and regular. So irregular things, things which occur only once in history, there is no reason to perceive them, because they did not add any added value or adaptive advantage. So our mind as it is highly likely is just product of evolution, and to bring us some evolutionary advantages. So here is the example. So let's say water. So I can perceive water at the level of atoms or subatomic atomic nuclei or subatomic particles. I can perceive water as movement of molecules, as Brown movement of water molecules. I can perceive water as the trajectories of dynamics of these molecules in time. But none of this is the case how we perceive water. We perceive water as wave, as the surface of the water. So that's the threshold in our brain, which says from that level it's adaptive for us to see the reality, because on the lower levels it's for nothing, but for my survival and survival of my ancestors. It was very important to detect where the water is, and if there is the wave, so just to escape, to avoid it. Yes. So that's the point. So our brain produce the pictures, and only pictures which are adaptive for us, and that's fine. That's adaptive. It spares energy by to waste energy for things which are nothing for us. But it also limits the science or our understanding the reality, the reality. And sometimes the physics of the reality does not fit to cognitive abilities of our brain. And that's why it's so complicated to understand theory of relativity and these very abstract physical constructs. So for us, if we want to move to to leave the system, to leave the cognitive system which limits our understanding of reality, to leave it or to overcome the barriers, it's very important to understand the links between physical reality and the mental pictures, the mental reality. This question is addressed by so-called psychophysical problem or mind-body problem, and it's the neuroscience as well as the philosophical discipline. Thousands of philosophers and scientists are dealing with this problem and are trying to hack the intermediate level between mental and the physical, and to understand how these things are linked. If we know or if we understand the links, we are able to overcome the limits of our mind. So that's the point. There are different dimensions to which the fact that this problem is now unsolved propagates. On this Congress, I think that we all believe in freedom, in our individual freedom. Yes, that's why we are here, and that's fantastic. But in case of free will, we have many problems regarding the unsolved problem between mind and the reality. The free will problem was first targeted by Libet, the American physiologist, who designed several experiments which showed absolutely fascinating things. The experiment was constructed in this way. The subjects were asked to put the button anytime when they want. So you have free will and press the button anytime you want. Yes. And subjects tapped the experimental button, but they were recorded by EEG through entire time of the experiment, and Libet found fascinating things. And the thing is that 500 milliseconds before tapping the button in brain occurred the so-called readiness potentials, so EEG potential, which preceded for 500 milliseconds the moment when they pressed the button. And in this experiment, they also used very precise watches or oscilloscope to detect the psychological moment when the subject decided to press freely. Yes, so they were able to catch the moment when they press the button, and this moment was preceded by 200 milliseconds by the decision. Yes, so 300 milliseconds before the decision, I'm free and I want to press the button now. So half a second before, or 30 milliseconds before, that was the readiness potential. What does it tell us? It tells us that something made a decision 300 milliseconds before my free will. It's principle question which is fascinating many scientists and philosophers as well. And there is the entire discipline called neuroscience of free will, which is studying specifically this question. And before this question is solved, so who decided? So who bears the free will if not me? Because it was decided 300 milliseconds before. So that's the question. The second, much more interesting question is the question of consciousness. So we have in our mind some conscious pictures of reality. We are able to refer about them by so-called propositional statements. So whenever I say I think about, or I see something. So think about, see something. It's called in logics as propositional statement. So I'm referring about the mental contents in my mind. And the question is how these pictures, it's called in philosophy phenomenological consciousness, or phenomenal consciousness. How does it link to the physical features of the physical reality, external reality? And that's the principal problem. There are two possibilities how to solve it. The first is called dualism. It's based on Descartes' writings from 17th century, and dualists say that there are two entities, two different entities. First is the brain, with its physiological processes, and second is mind. And these two things has nothing to do each other, so they are not related. And the second concept is monism. That's the contrast, which say, okay, there is only one system, and it's the material system of our brain, which somehow produce the mind. Of course, we scientists believe in monistic concepts, but it's very difficult for people to reduce, to be able to reduce their mind, their free will, their consciousness, just to physiological processes. It's very complicated. We studied it extensively, this issue, and we found that there exists one psychological parameter, or the personality parameter, which says to which extent people are able to accept that their mind is just an epiphenomena, or is just product of physiological activity of brain. Second approach to solving the mind-body problem is to look for so-called neuronal correlates of consciousness, and to look for the processes through which the information from external reality is processed in the brain, and how the mental pictures are constructed. Yes. So let's say we have outside world, we have the brain. Inside the brain, there are some physiological processes, action potentials, activity of neurons, their collaboration, etc. And the final product is the percept, and the conscious percept. So we can apply the propositional statement, I see a dog, in this case. So and these links are studied by neural correlates of consciousness approaches. There are different approaches, and they have some common denominators. Probably the reality in our brain is processed hierarchically, and our brain is constructed in the similar way like society. So in society, at the bottom, there are poor people who work for all and who feed all others. Above them are people who eat for you. Above them are militaries and armies, people who kill for the society. Above are people who fool the society by ideology, religion, etc. And at the top there are somebody who profit from this and who rules. So as the society is hierarchically constructed, the brain activity is hierarchically constructed as well. There are three principal theories which are the candidates for cracking the problem of the link between consciousness or conscious contents and reality. And these three theories are extremely important and influential now, and we believe that maybe some of them will change our opinion about ourselves. So the entropy principle says that brain is the system which is dedicated to decrease level of uncertainty, so to decrease the entropy. How brain does it? Brain does it by the fact that it works in so-called attractors, so in neural networks which are specifically dedicated to some activity. We use, for example, magnetic resonance imaging, the functional magnetic resonance imaging. It's the technique which enables us to measure how brain works in different situations and how process different tasks. 20 years before, we believe that brain consists of some brain centers with specific functions, that some gyri or lobes of brain are specialized to some mental activities. Now we know definitely that this is not the case, but we know that our brain operates in so-called networks. So in remote population of neurons, which are highly interconnected by tracts of white matter, and these networks are specialized for different activities. The elegant example, or the best example, is the so-called triple network model, which says that above or within dozens of these specialized brain networks, 3 of them are the most important. That's now in neuroscience the paradigmatic thing. Which of these 3 networks I'm speaking about? The first network is called default mode networks, or the network of default mode consisting of midline structures, lower parietal cortex and hippocampi, doesn't matter where is it, and that's the network which is active, which is the more active, the less I do. So this is the specific network responsible for rest. For just if I ask you, do whatever you want, close your eyes and stay in this condition. What you will do? You will think about past. You will plan for future. You will think about yourself. So autobiographic memory, planning, desires, beliefs, everything will happen in our mind. And the brain correlate of this activity is so-called default mode network. If your attention is turned outside your internal contents, and you try to solve the situation which is around you, if you are asked to make some mathematical task, to perform visually, anything, anytime when our attention is turned outside, we are in central executive network. It's the network consisting of bilateral parietal cortex and frontal cortex. It's this one. And there's something in the brain which decides if I am inside me or if I turn my attention outside. If there is nothing salient in the reality, if there is nothing important, so I stay in the default mode network because it's energy sparing and it's good. Why to waste energy if I'm fully adapted to the reality and there are no needs to solve something, to manipulate this external object. But if there is something salient, important, so I have to react to it and solve it. So in this concept there is supposed to be the principal role of so-called salience network, which consists of other brain areas, it doesn't matter how they are called, bilateral insulas and anterior cingulate cortex. And this network is responsible for recognizing that something outside is important and that it needs my attention to be solved, or for me it's important to be adapted to this. So this enigmatic network is responsible for directing our attention and for selecting from the reality the important things, from which in the later steps I'll construct the pictures of the reality. This is just example how this model would be applied. It's an example from our research when we investigated subjects who were intoxicated or non-intoxicated by THC. We identified by some mathematical approach from the brain scans these 3 networks, and we found that the difference between intoxication when people are stoned and non-intoxication is slower anticorrelation between default mode network and the network of central execution. So the brain is not able to recognize if the system is inside or outside, and both these modes are somehow mixed. So that's the case which happened during the intoxication. It's nice finding, because up to that time we are not able to find the correlates of intoxication, despite the fact that everybody knows that if we are intoxicated, that something happened, but the magnetic resonance was not able to recognize the differences in brain activity. But now it is clear. So to keep the brain in the optimal low entropy system and just activate only networks which are responsible for the concrete situation, for the concrete task necessary for the situation, is one idea how brain processed reality. The second idea, also very important, is called predictive processing. What does this hypothesis or idea concept says? The concept says that we have the maps of reality, And the perception of reality is not like photographing or making or copying the reality inside our brains, but that perception is active inference. So we create the reality on the basis of disagreement between expected and the ongoing stimuli. So let's say we have. And this theory deals with term priors. Priors are the expectations about reality. And the theory says, so we have expectations about the reality, what will be in the future, in several seconds, for example. And if these expectations are in full agreement with the stimuli, we do not perceive it. Why? Because it's for nothing, because we are fully adapted on the reality. But if these priors is in disagreement, it produces the moment of surprise. The surprise the same as prediction error, the error in prediction, and it quickly turns my attention to the stimuli which are in disagreement with my expectations, and I have to update the priors, update the expectations, and I perceive the reality. Yeah? Did you catch the point? So the point is that perceived is only what is somehow unexpected. So the prediction errors are extremely important because they create the contours, the lines of reality. Here's example, and majority of visual illusions are based on some mistakes in prediction coding in this mechanism. So this is Necker cube, well-known illusion, and what you can see here is that for some time, approximately 1.5 to 2 seconds, you perceive the cube as turned with this angle to you, and after 2 seconds, you change the expectation. So it is illusion because the illusion is based on unstable priors. It's not possible to decide which prior is okay. So we are permanently cyclically testing two priors, how the cube is oriented to us, and that's why it's so funny. And it is the illusion. Yes, this is even better example. This is called hollow mask illusion, and it's another example of very interesting prediction error. This is not the trick of the video. When we investigate patients or intoxicated people with this, we are using the physical mask. And the problem is that our brain is unable to see or to perceive the face as hollow. Why? Because the prior that if I am looking at somebody's face, the face is convex, is so strong from evolution, because in evolution neither us nor our ancestors looked inside the head, inside the face. So the prior that face is convex all the time is so strong that it's not able to update it and to replace it by the prior that it's possible to look inside somebody's head. Yes. So the prior in this case is too strong. So that's why, because the prediction mechanism does not work in these cases. So that's why they are illusion. But I use them just to document how is it. Third theory, quite influential and maybe the most important, dealing with the mind-body problem, is the integrated information theory, or the theory of consciousness as integrated information. The theory is very complicated, it's full of mathematics, and it's a little bit beyond scope of this meeting to explain it in details. But what's the result, or what's the punchline of the theory? The punchline of the theory is that Giulio Tononi, the author of it, tried to find the basic features of mind contents and to adapt them, and to he asked, what's the consciousness, what's the conscious content, how is it ruled, or which laws are there, and then to find the similar features in the physical structure in brain activity. So he postulated several axioms, what the mind content is about, and for them he searched for postulates. So he did define the mathematical features of brain activity, which would fit to the mental contents. So and the result of this theory, which is really fascinating, is that there is one principle, mathematical principle, which says if something is perceived or not, if it is the conscious content or not. And this principle is called the integrated information. Integrated information denotes to the fact that something, some mathematical object is not possible, or mental object, it's not possible to deconstruct to its particles. So that's why it is the integrated information. So let's say table. Table is the irreducible concept, because if I say legs of table and desk of table, there are two things: legs of table and desk of table. It's not table. Table is table. It's not possible to reduce it as the mental concept. So Tononi postulated that there exists some mental concept. The mental concepts are based on irreducibility of information which is there, and these irreducible concepts are called concepts. So our mental image consists of concepts. So you can see me, and your concept of me is Dr. Horáček, man, scientist, physician, etc. And these are the basic, in the next step, irreducible concepts. And that's what structuralizes the mental activity, and what's also identify the grain, because the grain is essential. In which grain I will perceive the reality. Like you perceive me as one object, not as the billions and billions of molecules. Yeah, because it's not possible to deconstruct me. So integrated information theory says that mind or the consciousness consists of irreducible concepts, and the number of irreducible concepts is the measure of the vividity and richness. So and this is probably the limit of our mind. So that's what we want to overcome if we try to crack the problem of mind-body. So what we can do first, we can believe in evolution, because our brains are products of 3.7 billions of years of evolution. The neurons occurred firstly in cetaceans, in these nice animals. 60 million years before, and neural tissue evolves continuously. So we can believe that in future the mental abilities will be closer to physical reality, to be able to understand reality as it is, and not only as it is mapped by our mind today. Second approach was inspired by Julian Huxley, Cambridge, in 50s, who established the transhumanistic movement. He and his followers believe that it's possible to enrich humankind by processors, by proteins, and many devices which we put into the body or into the head, and will improve the cognitive abilities. To my extent, to my side, it's a little bit naive, but why not? We have some physical or technical techniques how to improve or how to change cognition. For example, transcranial magnetic stimulation, when we can increase or decrease activity of some brain areas. Typically, it's used, as in our institute, to treat mental illnesses, but on the other side, theoretically, it's possible to use to increase the memory capacity, IQ, and these cognitive parameters, theoretically. And we have also the drugs. We have also the pharmacological possibilities. And this thing, I think, these psychedelics are probably the hot candidates for improving our understanding of reality. Just briefly, hallucinogens are a group of drugs which is completely distinct from illicit drugs of dependence. Hallucinogens are agonists of serotonergic receptors. They are not dopaminergic agents, so that's why they don't produce, or the risk is minimal, of dependence. And psychedelics, now we are in the second wave of interest of psychedelics because they showed several absolutely fascinating features for research and for clinics as well. For research and for our talk, the most important findings was published in this journal when the authors measured the brain activity during intoxication of psilocybin, the prototypical tryptamine hallucinogenic drug, and they found that brain of people who are intoxicated consists of much more connectivity patterns than brain of people who are non-intoxicated. What does it mean? It means that the basic concepts, the basic stones, the bricks from which our phenomenal experience consists of, are more vivid. There are more representations, and it corresponds with more with enriching the connectivity patterns in the brain. So let's say our perception of reality is limited by these parameters, by parameters of local maxima of integrated information within these mental and physiological concepts. And if the people are intoxicated, there are more connectivity patterns and more representations in the phenomenological consciousness. This is probably something what's specific only for hallucinogens. It is a quite interesting comparison between ecstasy, MDMA, and psilocybin. Ecstasy is not the true hallucinogen. And here the connectivity, the richness of connectivity metrics, and you can see that the richness of connectivity metrics, so number of connections which are during the scanning analyzed or detected, yeah, number of physical substrates of mental experience is much more pronounced in psilocybin compared with ecstasy. So it's really something what's specific, not for all drugs. It's not detected on stimulants. It's not in entactogens, but only in true hallucinogens. Maybe it is also responsible for the cannabis intoxication. Is our recent study published this year, in which we found that number of connectivity patterns in people who are intoxicated by THC, by marijuana, is also much more pronounced. So more connectivity patterns in THC intoxication than in non-intoxication. So probably hallucinogens or psychedelics are tools which can modulate the reality conus which is above us and which is before us. Let's imagine that here we are now, and our current state, our current mental state, is linked to limited number of past reality states and to limited number of future states which could happen can happen in future. If we enlarge the cone of reality by the use of artificially changing the brain by hallucinogens, the conus is much more wider, and we can perceive much more things, not only psychologically, but it's also represented physiologically. Maybe this is responsible for the extreme characters of psychedelic experience in the mental picture. Last quite interesting thing which has been documented in psychedelics and in ketamine is the neuroplastic effect. These two classes of drugs, so ketamine and true hallucinogens, increase increase the sprouting of axons, increase the number of synapses in the brain. And it is very quickly, within minutes or hours. So within hours of intoxication, after intoxication, there increase up to 10-20% number of synapses in some parts of the brain. And the more synapses there are, the more precise the computation processes in the brain, and maybe the closer we could be to the reality. So it's also enigmatic, absolutely paradigmatic finding. So to test this ability, to test the possibility that psychedelic drugs are able to help us with solving the psychophysical or mind-body problem, because we know how they act pharmacologically, and we also know what they do on the mental side. So that are useful tools for this neuroepistemological findings. We found it, or we prepared the foundation for psychedelic research, in which which is dedicated to support research of psychedelics in different fields, including the neurophenomenology and neuro-ontology. We have several projects. You can contribute by financial support to them. We study psilocybin as the fast antidepressant. We study how the classical setting of administration of these drugs can change their clinical effect, and recently we also have the iTrip application, which is specifically dedicated to the linking the phenomenology and neurobiology of these drugs. So this application will be for online evaluation of effects of psychedelic. We want to study how different psychedelics change differently the mental picture, so how they modify the physiology, and we are testing if they are able to help us with solving the mind-body problem. We also evaluate the long-term effects of these drugs on well-being, creativity, etc. And there are also modules, or there will be modules of safety and to use the data for scientific research. So here are some pilot results. We have subjects on LSD, MDMA, psilocybin, who with the mobile phone application refer about them. We have different instruments to measure it, and if you are interested in this, you can contribute through normal currencies or through Bitcoin, and help us to release this application, which will be free for everybody who want to study its own psychedelic experience and compare it with others, and help us to utilize these phenomena for scientific research. Thank you very much.
So, thank you a lot, Jiri, for your comprehensive presentation full of useful and interesting information. We are a bit out of time, but I think we can ask maybe one, maybe two questions. So, question.
Thank you very much for this presentation. About the most shocking thing I've learned, and I've never heard about is that after, if I understood it correctly, after you take acid, your brain starts growing very rapidly by forming those synapses. That's just so shocking, isn't it? So my question to you is that if that is the case, and indeed there's neuroplasticity that starts immediately, hours after ingestion of some of these substances, why don't we just start tripping on acid every single day and just grow our brains as a civilization every single day? Like, what would happen to the neuroplasticity? Would it just peak out at some level? Why don't we?
We don't know, and we also don't know if it is so adaptive. But what we know is, and why we are studying is is the fact that neuroplasticity is responsible for antidepressant response. Normally, if you suffer from depression, it takes with standard treatment for 3 to 4 weeks before so the onset of standard antidepressants is delayed. But in case of ketamine or psilocybin, this is well documented that they have antidepressant properties with onset within hours. So that's why we are studying this, and it's really one of the most important topics in psychiatric research. So all laboratories are now studying psilocybin and ketamine. Ketamine is I'm using ketamine on a daily basis with my patients as the antidepressant, the subanesthetic, not anesthetic, but the subanesthetic dose. So that increasing the number of synapses is relevant for in treatment of mental disorders. It's absolutely clear The problem is how to sustain the effect, because if we boost the neuroplasticity, in case of ketamine, it lasts only 4 to 7 days. So we have to repeat the infusion or somehow to prolong the effect. In case of tryptamines and of psilocybin, it seems, but there are on pilot studies now from Imperial College London now that it lasts for 3 months. So the effect is more persisting than in case of ketamine. So on the clinical side, it's clear that it's highly relevant. It's questionable if it is relevant for human evolution and etc. We do not know the answer, but definitely it's something what should be should be studied. And last thing, we published one study in which we document that the antidepressant effect, the robustness of the antidepressant effect, is linked or is linearly correlated with the intensity of psychedelic experience during ketamine infusion. So what does it mean? Probably the psychedelic experience is also done by at the moment growing up these synapses, so it's links, because the more synapses there are, the more vivid the psychedelic state is, and the more robust antidepressant response measured after 1 or 2 weeks after the intoxication. So it's fascinating. Yes.
Thank you a lot for the discussion. It seems to be very interesting, but unfortunately in 3 minutes, another presentation is starting here. So again, thank you a lot, Jiri. And I guess you will be here the next minute, so please contact him directly and ask questions. Thank you.